You know that stomach-dropping moment when your 4-year-old accidentally reveals your husband's affair during Sunday brunch? Yeah, turns out Yale doesn't offer a course on what to do when your toddler exposes your crumbling marriage over Belgian waffles 101. That's exactly what happened last Sunday when my daughter Eloise looked up from her strawberry-topped waffle and called me Sarah instead of Mommy. The elegant Waterford crystal glasses on our dining table suddenly felt like they were made of plastic as my in-laws froze mid-bite, and my husband Curtis turned a shade of white that Pottery Barn would probably call adulterer's pallor. I'm Sylvie Lewis, 36, editor-in-chief at Luminous Magazine, that award-winning publication everyone claims to read but actually just displays on their reclaimed wood coffee tables. And apparently, I've been cast in the role of unsuspecting wife in the suburban Connecticut version of a Lifetime movie. Sweetie, I'm Mommy, not Sarah. I corrected Eloise with my best PTA meeting smile, the kind that shows teeth but hides panic. But you look like Sarah, Eloise insisted, stabbing her waffle with the precision of a tiny prosecutor. Sarah has pretty hair like you. She's Daddy's girlfriend. She sleeps in Daddy's room when you go on your important business trips. The silence that followed was so thick you could spread it on toast. Curtis choked on his $7 artisanal cold brew, and my mother-in-law Margaret, who has spent the last 8 years implying that my career was the reason Curtis and I only had one child, suddenly became very interested in rearranging the seasonal table runner. Sarah makes unicorn pancakes, Eloise continued, oblivious to the mushroom cloud she'd just detonated over our handcrafted farmhouse table. And she has sparkly nails. Can I have sparkly nails too, Mommy? I'll admit, the unicorn pancakes detail stung more than it should have. I've been making Eloise heart-shaped pancakes for years, but apparently, I'd been outclassed by mythological breakfast creatures. Curtis, I said, my voice as calm as a Xanax commercial. Who is Sarah? My husband of 8 years. The man I met at a publishing conference in Boston. The same man who proposed at the Pierre in New York with a 2.3-carat diamond that maxed out his credit card. Suddenly developed an intense fascination with his napkin. He folded it into smaller and smaller squares as if he could make himself disappear along with it. She's probably talking about Sarah from daycare, Curtis attempted, his voice cracking like a 13-year-old boy's. You know how kids mix things up. Except Eloise doesn't go to daycare. She attends the Fairfield Montessori preschool that costs more per year than my college textbooks did, specifically so she could develop what the brochure called exceptional cognitive accuracy. Daddy, Sarah's not from school, Eloise corrected him with the brutal honesty only children possess. She's the lady who works with you, the one who gave me the sparkly unicorn sticker for my reward chart. She said I'm the prettiest girl, just like my daddy is the handsomest daddy. My father-in-law Richard, a retired insurance executive who still wears a tie to Sunday brunch on principle, suddenly needed to check something in his Lexus. My mother-in-law discovered an urgent text from her bridge partner, and Curtis developed a mysterious coughing fit that required him to excuse himself to the kitchen. I sat there, mentally calculating how many nights Curtis had worked late in the past 6 months. 47. How many emergency client meetings had popped up on weekends? 16. And how many business trips had mysteriously extended by a day or two? 9. I'd been so busy balancing motherhood with running a magazine that I'd failed to notice my marriage had turned into an open relationship. Except I was the only one not in on the arrangement. More syrup, Eloise? I asked, passing the Vermont maple that costs as much per ounce as decent whiskey. While Eloise drowned what remained of her waffle, I scrolled through Curtis's Instagram, which he'd conveniently left open on his iPad. There she was, tagged in his company's photos. Sarah Bellamy, the newly appointed CFO at Fairfield Financial Partners, where Curtis was executive vice president. Her profile picture featured impossibly shiny hair, a dazzling smile, and, I couldn't make this up, a plate of unicorn-shaped pancakes with the caption, "Weekend Vibes. Brunch Queen, nailed it." By the time Curtis returned from his strategic retreat to the kitchen, I'd also found 17 photos of them at various company events, standing progressively closer in each one. In the most recent, his hand rested on the small of her back, that intimate gesture that declares territorial rights more effectively than peeing on a fire hydrant. So, unicorn pancakes, huh? I said when he sat back down, his face composed into what he probably thought was casual innocence. That's quite the skill set for a chief financial officer. The color drained from his face faster than our property value would once I was finished with him. Sylvie, it's not what you think, he began, the universal mating call of the caught spouse. Not here, I said, nodding toward Eloise, who was now arranging her strawberries into a smiley face, blissfully unaware she'd just detonated my marriage like a glitter bomb at a funeral. Curtis nodded gratefully, probably thinking he'd bought himself time to construct an elaborate explanation. Little did he know I'd already screenshotted everything and texted the photos to myself. Yale might not teach courses on handling marital betrayal, but it definitely taught me research methodology and strategic planning. My in-laws returned with the synchronization of synchronized swimmers, their faces arranged in what they hoped were neutral expressions. Well, this has been lovely, my mother-in-law said, reaching for her Burberry coat. But we should really get going. Bridge club. Very important match today. On Sunday? I asked sweetly. It's a special tournament, she improvised, not meeting my eyes. Very prestigious. Of course, I nodded. Almost as prestigious as being named CFO at 32 with only 3 years of experience in the field. Sarah must be quite the financial prodigy. The silence that followed was interrupted only by Eloise asking if we could get a unicorn. After they left, Curtis tried damage control. Sylvie, I can explain. Sarah is just a colleague who... Not now, I cut him off. I have a feature to edit for tomorrow's deadline. We'll discuss your colleague, her unicorn pancakes, and her apparent sleepovers in our house while I was landing the Cartier advertising deal in Chicago. Tonight, after Eloise is asleep. What Curtis didn't know was that I wasn't editing a feature. I was actually researching Connecticut's divorce laws, texting my friend Marin, who happens to be the best family attorney in Fairfield County, and formulating a plan that would make Sarah's unicorn pancakes look like amateur hour. Because while Curtis was busy working late, he'd forgotten one crucial detail. I don't just edit stories for a living. I control the narrative. And this narrative was about to take a turn he never saw coming. Putting a 4-year-old to bed after she's inadvertently exposed your husband's affair is like trying to fold a fitted sheet. Technically possible, but unnecessarily complicated. Eloise wanted 4 bedtime stories, 2 glasses of water, and a detailed explanation of why unicorns don't come to Connecticut. By the time I finally closed her door, I'd mentally drafted and deleted 17 different confrontation speeches. I found Curtis in his home office, furiously typing on his laptop. Probably Googling how to convince your wife that your girlfriend's sleepovers are work-related, or nearby extended-stay hotels with good Yelp reviews. So, I leaned against the door frame, arms crossed. Sarah Bellamy, CFO, Unicorn Pancake Extraordinaire. Tell me, does HR know about your innovative mentoring techniques? Curtis closed his laptop with the panicked speed of a teenager hiding porn. Sylvie, it's not what you think. That's fascinating, because I think you're sleeping with your recently promoted colleague in our bed while I'm securing advertising deals that pay for Eloise's Montessori tuition. Please, enlighten me on what it actually is. It's complicated, he offered, employing the relationship status beloved by cheaters and tax evaders everywhere. Complicated, I repeated, tapping my Tory Burch flat against the hardwood floor that we'd refinished last summer while discussing our 5-year plan. You know what's complicated? Quantum physics, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, explaining to our daughter why Daddy's special friend makes better breakfast food than Mommy. Curtis ran his hand through his artfully tousled hair, the same hairstyle he'd maintained since business school, which cost $85 every 6 weeks at that pretentious salon downtown. It just happened, Sylvie. You're always working, always traveling. I cut him off with a laugh that would make my therapist wince. Wow. So this is my fault? I'm too busy earning a living to notice you've turned our marriage into a timeshare property? That's not what I'm saying. Did Sarah just materialize in our house? Did she trip and fall onto our West Elm bed with her unicorn pancake mix? Or did you actively invite her over while I was in Chicago landing the deal that paid for your Tesla? Curtis had the audacity to look wounded. You're making this sound sordid. And you're making this sound like an innocent misunderstanding instead of months of calculated deception. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through the screenshots I'd taken earlier. 17 company events where you two are practically morphing into one person. Did the company photographer capture the exact moment you decided our vows had an expiration date? It wasn't planned, Curtis protested, his voice hitting that whiny register that emerged whenever he felt cornered. Sarah and I just connected. She understands the pressure I'm under. The pressure you're under? I laughed again, this time with the hollow sound of a woman discovering her husband's emotional depth was comparable to a puddle in the Sahara. Please tell me more about this crushing pressure of being an executive VP with a corner office while I balance running an entire magazine with raising our daughter. The doorbell rang, interrupting what was shaping up to be an Emmy-worthy confrontation. Curtis looked relieved until I checked my phone and smiled. "That'll be Marin," I said pleasantly. "Your lawyer friend? Why is she here at 9 p.m. on a Sunday?" I shrugged. "I wanted a witness when I changed the locks." Curtis blanched. "You can't just change the locks. This is my house too." "Actually, it's my house," I corrected him. "If you'd bothered to read the documents when we refinanced last year, you'd know I'm the sole owner. Remember when you were too busy to attend the closing and signed the power of attorney? Turns out being lazy and unfaithful is quite the combo." The look on his face was worth every penny of that overpriced Fairfield Montessori tuition. While he processed this information, I went to let Marin in. She arrived with locksmith tools, a bottle of Veuve Clicquot, and the determined expression of someone who enjoys dismantling cheaters almost as much as she enjoys winning custody battles. "Evening, Curtis," she nodded briskly as she passed his office. "I've brought some light reading for you. Separation agreement, preliminary asset division, and custody schedule." She dropped a manila folder on his desk with the precision of someone delivering an anthrax sample. "This is ridiculous," Curtis sputtered. "You can't just—" "Oh, but I can," I interrupted. "You see, while you were teaching Sarah the intricacies of pancake art, I was making sure our finances were in order. Did you know Connecticut is an equitable distribution state? Marin explained it all to me this afternoon." Curtis's face cycled through emotions faster than Eloise choosing ice cream flavors. "You're overreacting. We should discuss this privately. Like how you privately discussed our marriage with Sarah? Or privately invited her into our home?" I gestured toward our kitchen. "Did she use my Williams-Sonoma cookware for those unicorn pancakes, or did she bring her own spatula? These are the details that keep me up at night." Marin, bless her divorce attorney heart, began inspecting our front door lock with clinical detachment. "Standard schlug. I can have this changed in 20 minutes. The back door might take longer." Curtis looked between us, reality finally penetrating his privileged bubble of entitlement. "Where am I supposed to go tonight?" "I hear Sarah's place is nice," I offered sweetly, "though it might be awkward explaining to her why you're suddenly homeless." "Sorry, honey. Turns out my wife isn't as clueless as we thought. Can you make me some consolation pancakes?" His face flushed with anger. "You're enjoying this, aren't you?" "About as much as I enjoyed hearing my daughter call me by your girlfriend's name," I replied, my smile never wavering. "Now, I suggest you pack an overnight bag. Nothing fancy, just the essentials. Oh, and don't forget your toothbrush. Dental hygiene is so important when you're orally explaining to your boss why you might be facing a sexual harassment lawsuit." Curtis froze. "You wouldn't." "Wouldn't I? The company has a clear anti-fraternization policy, especially between executives and their direct reports." "Did Sarah's promotion happen before or after she started making breakfast in my kitchen? The board might find that timeline interesting." The blood drained from his face as he realized I wasn't just angry. I was strategic. "You'd ruin my career over this? You'd ruin our family over unicorn pancakes?" I countered. "We all make choices, Curtis. Yours led to this moment. Mine are leading to changed locks and a consultation with your company's ethics committee." As if on cue, Marin pulled out her phone. "Should I text Marcus? He's on the board at Fairfield Financial, right? We played golf last weekend at the country club." The mention of Marcus, the notoriously straight-laced head of the board, was the final blow. Curtis disappeared upstairs and returned 10 minutes later with a duffel bag and the haunted expression of a man who just realized his affair would cost more than his Amex Black Card could cover. At the door, he tried one last appeal. "What about Eloise? She needs her father." "She does," I agreed. "She needs a father who respects her mother. When you figure out how to be that man again, we'll talk about visitation that doesn't involve your paramour's culinary skills." As Curtis walked to his Tesla, I called after him. "One last thing. Tell Sarah her unicorn pancakes lack imagination. Everyone knows real magical breakfast food comes with glitter sprinkles." I closed the door on his stunned face, leaning against it as Marin popped the champagne. "Round one to Sylvie Lewis," she declared, pouring bubbly into coffee mugs since I couldn't remember where I'd stored the champagne flutes. "But this is just the beginning. You know that, right?" I nodded, accepting the makeshift champagne glass. "Oh, I know. And I'm just getting started." Little did Curtis know, I'd spent the afternoon not just consulting with Marin about divorce proceedings, but also calling my old college roommate Thea, who now worked at Curtis's company's parent firm. And what she told me about Sarah Bellamy's suspiciously rapid rise to CFO was about to make unicorn pancakes the least of Curtis's problems. Monday mornings are difficult for anyone, but they're especially challenging when you're running on 4 hours of sleep and plotting the systematic dismantling of your cheating husband's life. After dropping Eloise at Montessori, where she helpfully informed her teacher that Daddy has a sleepover friend named Sarah who makes unicorn food, I headed to my office at Luminous Magazine with a venti cold brew and the kind of determination usually reserved for marathon runners and discount shoppers on Black Friday. My assistant Zoe took one look at me and whispered, "Bathroom. Now." She followed me in, locked the door and said, "You look like you're either planning a murder or a magazine redesign, and frankly, I'm scared of both." "Curtis is having an affair with his newly promoted CFO," I said, reapplying my MAC Russian red lipstick with surgical precision. "Eloise outed them during brunch yesterday. Apparently Sarah makes unicorn pancakes when I'm out of town." Zoe's jaw dropped so fast I worried she'd dislocated it. "That absolute walnut! Please tell me you're destroying him." "I changed the locks last night," I said, fluffing my hair. "But that's just the appetizer. I'm about to serve a 5-course revenge meal that Gordon Ramsay would call spectacularly ruthless." Back at my desk, I called Thea, who'd promised to send me some interesting files. Within minutes, my email pinged with documents bearing the Fairfield Financial Partners letterhead. "Christmas came early," I muttered, scanning the contents. According to the files, Sarah Bellamy's promotion to CFO had bypassed 3 more qualified candidates, including a woman who'd been with the company for 12 years. The board had questioned the rapid promotion, but Curtis had personally vouched for Sarah's exceptional financial acumen, apparently corporate speak for makes breakfast shaped like mythical creatures. Even more interesting, Sarah had been given signing authority on certain accounts merely 3 weeks after her promotion. Accounts that showed some questionable transfers to offshore consulting firms that didn't seem to exist. I was so engrossed in my discovery that I almost missed my phone buzzing with Curtis's 5th call of the morning. I declined it, just as I declined his 27 text messages ranging from apologetic, "I made a terrible mistake," to indignant, "You can't just lock me out of my own house," to pathetic, "Please just tell me what clothes to bring to my meeting today." Instead, I texted Marin, "Found something. Lunch?" We met at an overpriced salad place that Curtis hated because they didn't serve anything substantial enough for a man's appetite. I slid the documents across the table after ordering. "So," Marin said, scanning the pages while spearing a $19 kale concoction, "your husband not only promoted his girlfriend suspiciously fast, but also gave her financial powers that she's potentially misusing? That's not just an affair. That's a lawsuit buffet. The question is," I sipped my sparkling water, "how do I leverage this without getting Curtis arrested for financial impropriety? I want to destroy his relationship and career, not send him to federal prison. Eloise still needs a father, even if he's an unfaithful idiot." Marin's eyes gleamed. She lived for these strategic challenges. "The company's annual charity gala is this Friday, right? The one where Curtis is receiving that leadership award?" I nodded. "The Fairfield Financial Philanthropy Ball. I've been helping him practice his acceptance speech for weeks. I laughed bitterly. He keeps stumbling over the part where he thanks his supportive wife and family. Guess now I know why. Perfect. Marin tapped the documents. We don't need to alert the SEC. We just need the board to know there's something fishy happening. A little corporate blood in the water. By the time our overpriced lunch ended, we had crafted a plan so meticulous it could have been featured in Harvard Business Review under Creative Destruction, Dismantling Infidelity with Strategic Precision. That afternoon, I called the event planner for the philanthropy ball, Vivian Mercer, who'd once featured me in Luminous for her innovative approach to sustainable event design. Vivian, it's Sylvie Lewis, I chirped. Listen, I want to surprise Curtis at the gala. I know I wasn't scheduled to speak, but I've prepared something special for his award presentation. Can you add me to the program? Vivian, delighted by the romantic gesture, happily adjusted the evening's schedule. You're right after the chairman's introduction and before Curtis receives the award. About 3 minutes, if that works. Perfect, I confirmed. Oh, and one more thing. Could you make sure I'm seated next to Marcus Reynolds at dinner? Curtis mentioned wanting me to discuss a potential magazine feature on Marcus's philanthropic work. Next, I contacted my friend Jade, who ran the most exclusive dress boutique in Fairfield. I need something unforgettable for Friday. The kind of dress that makes men weep and women take notes. My office phone lit up with my mother-in-law's name. Interesting timing. I answered sweetly. Margaret, what a surprise. Sylvie, dear. Her voice dripped with artificial concern. Curtis mentioned you two had a misunderstanding. He's staying at the Marriott, a hotel, Sylvie. What will people think? Probably that he should have thought about accommodation options before sleeping with his CFO in our bed, I replied pleasantly, as if discussing the weather. By the way, did you know about Sarah before Eloise mentioned her unicorn pancakes, or was that a charming surprise for you too? Margaret's sharp intake of breath told me everything. These things happen in marriages, dear. Richard and I went through a similar patch when Richard was sleeping with his secretary while you raised his children. Is infidelity the Lewis family tradition I wasn't informed about during the wedding toast? Silence. Then, we should discuss this privately. Perhaps dinner tomorrow? I'm afraid I'm busy preparing for the philanthropy ball on Friday. Curtis is receiving an award, you know. I wouldn't miss it for the world. After hanging up, I turned my attention to the most important task, ensuring Eloise was protected from the fallout. I called her therapist, Dr. Flynn, and scheduled an emergency session for Wednesday, explaining the situation in careful terms. By Wednesday evening, my plan was fully formed. I had 1. A devastatingly elegant red dress that cost more than some people's monthly mortgage. 2. A carefully crafted 3-minute speech saved to my phone. 3. A seat next to Marcus Reynolds, who would receive an anonymous email about financial irregularities 1 hour before the gala. 4. Screenshots of Curtis and Sarah's Instagram interactions. 5. A dossier on Sarah's suspicious financial activities. 6. A modified divorce agreement drafted by Marin. 7. A new deadbolt on every external door of our house. What I didn't have was peace of mind about how this would affect Eloise. Her session with Dr. Flynn had gone well, but she'd asked the heartbreaking question, did Daddy leave because I told about Sarah? That night, as I tucked her in, I promised, Daddy loves you very much. Grown-ups sometimes make mistakes that have nothing to do with their children. You did nothing wrong. Will Daddy come home? She asked, clutching her stuffed penguin. I don't know, sweetie, I answered honestly. But no matter what happens with Daddy and me, we both love you more than anything in the world. After she fell asleep, I received a text from Curtis. Please, can we talk before Friday? For Eloise's sake. I stared at the message, considering the earnest plea. Then I remembered the unicorn pancakes, the secret sleepovers, the calculated deception, and Sarah's suspicious promotion. My fingers typed swiftly. Absolutely. I'll see you at the philanthropy ball. I've prepared something special for your award presentation. I'm sure Sarah will enjoy it too. I smiled as I imagined Curtis panicking, wondering exactly what I had planned. The beauty of my strategy wasn't just in what I would do, It was in the psychological torment of making him wait to find out. As my grandmother used to say, the anticipation of punishment is often worse than the punishment itself. But in Curtis's case, the punishment would absolutely live up to expectations. Friday couldn't come soon enough. Friday evening arrived with the dramatic timing of a Netflix season finale. The Fairfield Yacht Club glowed with tasteful lighting as Connecticut's financial elite arrived in luxury vehicles that cost more than the average public school teacher's annual salary. I'd spent the day being pampered into a weapon of mass destruction, hair blown out to glossy perfection, makeup that could cut glass, and that red dress that made me look like vengeance personified. My Uber pulled up precisely at 7:42 p.m., fashionably late enough to make an entrance, but early enough not to miss my scheduled speaking slot. The driver whistled as I stepped out. Someone's about to have a very good night or a very bad one. Oh, it's going to be spectacular, I assured him, adjusting my diamond earrings, a gift from Curtis on our 5th anniversary, which seemed appropriate for the occasion. The gala was in full swing when I entered. A waiter offered champagne, which I accepted with the smile of someone who's about to burn down a metaphorical village. Across the room, I spotted Curtis in his Tom Ford tuxedo, nervously scanning the crowd while maintaining strained conversation with board members. When he saw me, his champagne glass froze midway to his mouth. Next to him stood Sarah Bellamy, whose expression shifted from smug confidence to visible concern as she registered my arrival. Her black dress was designer but safe, the wardrobe equivalent of store-bought pancake mix. I waved cheerfully and made my way to my assigned table, where Marcus Reynolds was already seated. At 62, Marcus was the financial industry's version of Obi-Wan Kenobi, respected, powerful, and not someone you wanted as an enemy. Sylvie Lewis, I extended my hand. We met at the Governor's Economic Summit last year. Of course, he nodded. I enjoyed your magazine's exposé on sustainable investing. Thoughtful work. Thank you. I believe in bringing important matters to light, I replied, making deliberate eye contact. Transparency is everything in both journalism and finance. Wouldn't you agree? Marcus studied me with the shrewd assessment of someone who didn't become a billionaire by missing subtleties. Absolutely. Though not everyone appreciates having lights shined in dark corners. I imagine not. I sipped my champagne. Especially when those corners contain unicorn pancakes and questionable financial transfers. His eyebrow raised a fraction of an inch, the billionaire equivalent of a gasp. I received an interesting email about an hour ago. Anonymous, but quite specific. How curious, I murmured. Technology makes anonymity so accessible these days. Much like how it makes extramarital affairs and financial improprieties easier to document. Mom, Marcus's eyes gleamed with something between appreciation and alarm. Before he could respond, the chairman approached the podium to begin the award presentations. Curtis kept glancing at me with the panicked expression of a man who'd realized he'd brought a water pistol to a nuclear war. Sarah whispered something in his ear, her hand resting possessively on his arm until she caught me watching and quickly removed it. The chairman's voice boomed through the ballroom. Before we present our Leadership Excellence Award to Curtis Lewis, we have a special surprise. Curtis's wife, Sylvie Lewis, editor-in-chief of Luminous magazine, would like to say a few words. Sylvie? A spotlight found me as I made my way to the podium, my red dress creating a wake of whispers. Curtis looked like he might vomit into the centerpiece. Thank you. I smiled into the microphone. When my husband told me he was receiving this prestigious award, I knew I had to say something special. I paused, letting Curtis's relief wash over him prematurely. Leadership takes many forms, I continued. In business, it means making ethical decisions that benefit your company. In marriage, it means honoring your commitments. And in parenting, it means modeling behavior you'd want your children to emulate. The audience nodded appreciatively, unaware of the incoming missile. Unfortunately, my husband has failed spectacularly at all three. The collective intake of breath could have sucked the oxygen from the room. Curtis froze like a deer in designer headlights. You see, while Curtis was being nominated for this award, he was simultaneously promoting his mistress to CFO, bypassing more qualified candidates, and giving her authority over accounts that have shown, I consulted my phone casually. Approximately $2. $3 million in transfers to shell companies in the past quarter. Marcus Reynolds set down his champagne glass with a definitive clink. I discovered this not through corporate espionage, I clarified, but because our 4-year-old daughter innocently mentioned that Daddy's girlfriend Sarah makes unicorn pancakes in our kitchen when I'm traveling for work. Parenting tip: children are terrible secret keepers but excellent witnesses. Sarah Bellamy began inching toward the exit as all eyes turned to her. Curtis remained paralyzed at his table. Now, I could elaborate on how Curtis gave Sarah access to our home while I was securing advertising deals that paid for his Tesla, or how he gaslit me for months about his late nights at the office. But instead, I'd like to focus on the leadership lessons here. I gestured to the screen behind me, which now displayed the financial documents Thea had provided. These questionable transfers began 3 weeks after Sarah's promotion. I've provided copies to the board and, out of an abundance of caution, to the SEC. The room erupted in murmurs. Curtis finally found mobility and stood, his face contorted in panic. "Sylvie, this is inappropriate?" "Inappropriate?" I laughed. "Like sleeping with your direct report? Or using company funds questionably? Or allowing your girlfriend to make breakfast for our daughter while pretending she's just a colleague?" I turned back to the audience. For those wondering, yes, the pancakes were shaped like unicorns. Because nothing says, "I'm having an affair with a married father," like mythological breakfast foods. Security had now positioned themselves near Sarah, who had abandoned subtlety and was openly trying to reach the door. In conclusion, I smiled sweetly, I'm declining the honor of being married to Curtis Lewis, effective immediately. The divorce papers are being delivered to his room at the Marriott tonight. And while I can't speak for Fairfield Financial Partners, I suspect his employment status might also be under review. I turned directly to Curtis. "Leadership means accountability, Curtis. Though I'm sure that's covered in the sexual harassment training you apparently slept through." I stepped away from the podium to stunned silence followed by scattered applause led by Marcus Reynolds, who looked simultaneously horrified and impressed. As I walked past Curtis, I whispered, "The unicorn pancakes were a nice touch. Very creative. Unfortunately for you, so am I." Security was now escorting Sarah toward a side room where, I assumed, uncomfortable questions about financial transfers awaited her. Curtis attempted to follow me as I headed for the exit. "Sylvie, please. You've ruined everything," he hissed, grabbing my arm. I removed his hand with surgical precision. "No, Curtis, you ruined everything when you decided our marriage vows had a loophole for breakfast-making financial officers. I just exposed the truth. There's a difference." Marcus Reynolds intercepted us. "Curtis, the board needs to speak with you, now." His tone left no room for negotiation. As Curtis was led away, looking back at me with a mixture of rage and disbelief, I felt a tap on my shoulder. It was Vivian, the event planner. "That wasn't exactly the loving tribute we discussed," she said, though her eyes sparkled with admiration. "Oh, but it was a tribute," I replied. "To honesty, consequences, and the power of unicorn pancakes to bring down corporate empires." Outside, I slipped into my waiting Uber, texting Marin. "Mission accomplished. Coming to pick up Eloise from your place. Also, we may need to prepare for more SEC involvement than anticipated." Her reply came instantly. "Already on it. BTW, you're trending locally on Twitter. Our unicorn pancake revenge." As the car pulled away from the yacht club, I watched Curtis's professional life implode through the rear window and felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Peace. Not happiness, not yet, but the settled certainty that comes from reclaiming your narrative. Unicorn pancakes might be magical, but justice served cold with a side of public humiliation? That was the real chef's kiss. 3 months after the gala that locals now refer to as the Unicorn Pancake Massacre, life has settled into a new normal that feels surprisingly comfortable, like those expensive jeans that hurt at first, but eventually become your favorites. Eloise and I moved out of our Fairfield mansion into a charming craftsman in Westport. The divorce settlement was shockingly favorable. Amazing how generous men become when faced with potential SEC investigations. Curtis surrendered the house, which we promptly sold, his beloved Tesla, and agreed to alimony terms that had Marin doing a victory dance in her office. "You could have taken him for more," she noted while signing the final papers. "I could have," I agreed, "but I wanted it over quickly. Besides, the look on his face at the gala was worth more than his investment portfolio." Curtis's professional fallout was swift and comprehensive. Fairfield Financial Partners placed him on indefinite administrative leave within 48 hours of my speech. By week 3, he'd been quietly asked to resign. Sarah Bellamy wasn't so lucky. She's currently navigating preliminary SEC questioning while simultaneously trying to launch an Instagram cooking channel specializing in breakfast art. Her first unicorn pancake tutorial received comments exclusively about financial fraud, which I admit gave me a satisfaction that my therapist finds concerning. The questionable transfers turned out to be exactly what they appeared: a clumsy attempt to siphon company funds through fake consulting firms. Curtis claims he knew nothing about it, that Sarah acted alone. Maybe that's true, or maybe he's just saving what's left of his reputation. Either way, he's now working for his college roommate's significantly smaller firm in Rhode Island, and dating a pharmaceutical sales rep named Kylie, who, according to Eloise's weekend reports, makes regular circle pancakes. Progress, I suppose. As for me, Luminous Magazine's subscriptions jumped 32% after a video clip of my gala speech went viral. Turns out people appreciate publications run by women who don't tolerate duplicity. I received 14 speaking invitations about authentic leadership and maintaining integrity in crisis, which is ironic considering I planned my revenge with the meticulous detail of a supervillain. My mother-in-law, ex-mother-in-law, Margaret still calls occasionally with thinly veiled attempts to broker a reconciliation. "People make mistakes, Sylvie," she said during our last conversation. "Richard and I have been married for 41 years despite his indiscretions." "That's fascinating, Margaret," I replied. "But I prefer not to measure success by years of accumulated resentment." She hasn't called since. The most unexpected development has been Curtis's genuine attempt to rebuild his relationship with Eloise. He never misses a visitation, arrives with thoughtfully chosen gifts, not just guilt purchases, and has taken parenting classes without court mandate. Last weekend, he attended her soccer game and cheered appropriately without checking his phone once, a small miracle in modern parenting. Yesterday, during pickup, he actually apologized. Not the manipulative, "I'm sorry you felt hurt" version, but a genuine acknowledgement of his failures. "I destroyed something valuable for something worthless," he said, standing awkwardly on my porch. "I know we can't go back, but I hope someday you'll forgive me." "I already have," I replied, surprising myself with the truth of it. "Not for you, for me. Carrying anger is exhausting, and I have a magazine to run and a daughter to raise." He nodded, relief evident in his posture. "You're thriving. It looks good on you." "Revenge glow," I shrugged. "Better than any spa treatment." The truth is, sometimes catastrophes clear the ground for something better, like forest fires that, despite their destruction, create space for new growth. My marriage was the forest fire, and from its ashes has emerged a more authentic life. One without compromises disguised as accommodations or silences masquerading as peace. Eloise asks fewer questions about why Daddy lives in a different house now. Her therapist says she's adjusting well, displaying resilience that children often possess in greater measure than adults. Last week, she announced she wants to be a lawyer like Auntie Marin when she grows up, to help people get away from bad pancakes. We're still working on her metaphors. This morning, I made Eloise breakfast before school. Heart-shaped pancakes with rainbow sprinkles. As she ate, she looked up thoughtfully and asked, "Mommy, are you sad about Daddy anymore?" "No, sweetie," I answered honestly. "I'm not sad. Sometimes things don't work out the way we planned, but that doesn't mean they can't still work out well." She nodded, processing this with the serious consideration only 4-year-olds can give philosophical concepts between bites of syrup-soaked pancake. "Your pancakes are better anyway," she declared. "They have sprinkles. Unicorns aren't even real." Out of the mouths of babes comes wisdom that adults pay therapists hundreds of dollars to discover. The lesson in all this isn't that marriage is fragile, or that men are unreliable, or that revenge is sweet. Though watching Sarah Bellamy being escorted from the yacht club by security was certainly a moment I replay during difficult days. The real lesson is that we're more adaptable than we think, that losing what we thought we needed can reveal what we actually deserve, that sometimes the most painful revelations lead to the most authentic lives. Or, as I wrote in my recent editor's letter for Luminous, the most valuable breakfasts aren't shaped like mythical creatures, but built on actual nourishment. That piece won us a publishing award. Curtis sent congratulatory flowers. I donated them to a nursing home. Life goes on. And sometimes, if you're lucky, it goes on much better than before, with or without unicorn pancakes.